Welcome to Bring Out Your Badass Self, a movement to break your negative thoughts and habits and instead focus on building each other up and encouraging fearless authenticity.
Each week, we will get vulnerable and share experiences alongside our guests and audience. Come rediscover your inner badass self.
Good morning. Good morning, Kate. Happy Mother's Day weekend to you.
Good morning. Happy Mother's Day weekend to you. How are you?
I'm doing well, and happy Mother's Day weekend to our audience. We're curious to understand what you guys are doing this weekend. And so, Kate, what are you guys up to?
Jenna and I and the kids are going to do some work on our yard. Jenna loves the outdoors. She lives out there spring, summer, and fall. So we are putting up lights and just doing some of our normal spring stuff, but it's a great time to do it. And she really loves working with all of us in the yard. So
yeah, you guys have a little bit of like a fairy yard,
yes.
don't you? Where you have little fairies or
Yep. And we're in the trees, we're on a hill. It's a very unique little place. So it's super fun to throw lights all over.
That's awesome.
Yeah. How about you guys?
You know what? I'm having my mother this weekend, and we are going to be going to do some Korean barbecue tonight or on Saturday night. And then Jay has a brunch planned for us on Mother's Day.
Aww.
Yeah. And
that's
so
very sweet.
Spending time with family. And so good morning, Kim.
Good morning, Kim. So if this is your first time joining us this morning, please let us know. Share with others, but let us know by putting a little white heart in your comment. Yeah. So then we know that you're first time here. We can say hello. And then please share with others. Let's continue to spread our little movement here, bringing out your badass self. Let's get as many badasses as we can involved.
Yeah. So Carrie said that she is volunteering at an urban farm tonight and dreading Sunday, though. This is her first Mother's Day all without our mother. I'm sorry to hear that, Carrie. You're welcome to come up to my area and spend time with us. And so just know we'll be keeping you in our thoughts, and I hope you have a good time with volunteering at the urban farm tonight.
Yeah, there's an urban farm in Milwaukee that we adore and have volunteered at, and it's just wonderful. I love the concept of urban farms.
Yeah.
In general.
So we have two people that are on Facebook that have given us white hearts, but we actually don't know your name. So it could be two people or it could be one. I'm not sure, but they said, hi, Kate, and they've given us a heart. It does just say Facebook user. So make sure that you go to streamyard.com/Facebook. You have to say, give permission for us to be able to see your name, but welcome, Facebook user.
Yes. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah. And so, today's topic is about breaking cycles. And our guest, Jenna Phillips, is joining us. And so, Kate, do you want to do a little bit of an intro for us?
Yes, definitely. So Jenna she's dealt with a lot. Oh, hi, Betty. She's dealt with a lot over her lifetime, her glorious lifetime. She had childhood trauma growing up. She kind of had to wrestle with some of the fears that can result from having a lot of different traumas. And so she has fear of repeating patterns from her childhood. So she'll discuss those cycles, the ones that she's broken, the ones that she still kind of has to tackle on a daily basis. So let's bring her in. Without further ado, welcome, Jenna.
There we go.
Good morning. So how do you two know each other?
Well, I know Jenna's lovely wife. Her name is Kate. So the
Oh,
question
that's
should
hilarious.
probably be, how do you guys know each other? How did you meet each other?
Well, Kate and I have been married for almost 13 years. And we have known each other for 16. And then that's how I met you, Sarah, through your beautiful connection. And we were able to actually, come together and physically meet at your beautiful vacation home.
Yeah. It was great to meet everyone. I think we were able to meet everyone but one of your little kiddos.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
and so we enjoyed that. And it was cut a little short, but we enjoyed the time that we had.
Yes.
So, well, maybe we could start off with just giving our audience a little insight on who is Jenna.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I'm married to Kate, and we have 6 beautiful children. I homeschool those kiddos. 5 of our kiddos live at home. 2 of our kiddos are adopted. So we have a bit of a blended family. I heard you guys talking in the beginning before you brought me on. I do like to spend a lot of time outside. I love nature. And I love connecting with people and really hearing their stories and helping in ways that I can, which are really kind of unconventional.
Yeah. I think one of the things that always stood out as I have chatted with you over the years is that you're a really good listener. But as I started talking to you and having you unveil a little bit about your story, I think that maybe you're a little like that's not as comfortable for you. And so I appreciate you joining us today and talking with us, because it seems like you're more like you want to sort of dive into everyone else. But today we're gonna dive in a little bit more about you.
Yes, that is very accurate. I love learning about the world around me and the people around me. And I have a lot of self-love, but I don't necessarily share my story. I've already experienced it. And I was actually talking with Kate last night after we kind of went over the interview questions. I have a hard time sharing parts of my story, not because I have shame or I'm embarrassed of them, but because I really don't want people to feel bad about me. I've gone through some difficult situations, and I don't want people to think, oh, wow, she's been through that. I want them to see the light, and I want to give light rather than, a negative vibration, I guess.
Yeah. But I think that sometimes it's really helpful for people to see the things that people have gone through, because that's really what they a lot of times will connect with and understand. Oh, wow, this person has gone through this, but look at this person that now is seeking love, is seeking light. And so it's a lot of times a great learning lesson for people to be able to say, oh, I can see myself in this person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's dive in a little bit about your upbringing. And so to talk about some of those things, the challenges, I know you experienced poverty growing up. Can you tell us a little bit about how that shaped you as a person?
Yeah, I'd like to start and say that so both of my parents really wanted me. I was an only child, and it took them 10 years to conceive me. They had rough childhoods growing up, and they just really wanted to be parents. And I kind of followed in that footstep. I really wanted to be a parent. Upbringing, we were poor. We didn't have a lot of money. There were times that we didn't have a place to call our own. We did live with friends. There were times where we didn't have a lot of food, and I would have to be resourceful, whether like looking up food pantries as a kiddo or something like that to try to find something to eat. I think that shaped what I wanted in life for my own children, by knowing that, wow, this is really hard on my parents. A struggle for them. I could see them. I always saw them wanting to give me more. They wanted to give me the world, but they couldn't. And I always thought, I know they love me. They do this to feel better about themselves. And I just had so much empathy for that. And it just really push me to be a better person so that my kids would have something that I didn't have, but not in the sense of I really needed this. This is something that I was missing. It was more like, if I have this, I can be happy and stable for them. That's why I saw my parents struggling, and I didn't want to be in that situation.
Yeah, and I know we've tested out the sound, but I'm having sometimes a little bit of difficulty.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah, coming forward a little bit. And so, perfect.
All right.
And so, so when you think about your childhood, you had mentioned your mother. Maybe talking a little bit about your experience with your mother growing up.
So my mom was a beautiful soul. She did pass away in 2017. I had a friendship with her through adulthood. It was and with my dad. My mom did struggle with a lot of mental health issues that were undiagnosed. She had a very traumatic childhood, and so that did bleed into her parenting, which is something that I learned as I became a parent, that can happen. And if you don't do anything to break that cycle, to fix that, it'll just continue. And so my mom, I do believe, had some attachment disorders. After learning about trauma and being an adoptive parent, I really know a lot about that right now. And it's my mom to a T. So as a kiddo, I always took care of her. I needed to make sure she was all right. If something was wrong, it was my job to fix it.
Yeah. What, there were times when she was kind of emotionally unavailable, that you've shared with me. Can you do you want to give us some examples or go into that a little bit? Because I really feel like that kind of shaped who you were, what role you had in your little family, right?
Absolutely. So outside of not having like a physical security, there were multiple times that I didn't have like the emotional stability that I needed as well. And, I love my mom. She was a wonderful person. So I'm not speaking poorly of her, but we have to be aware of what other people are going through and how that shapes us. So I'm aware of what my mom was going through. There were times where I would be a young child, maybe 7, 8, 9, and something that I said would trigger my mom so intensely that she wouldn't be able to care for me. And it was just her and I in the home. My dad was struggling with addiction. And she would, go in her room for a day or two. And I remember knocking a lot and saying, "What's wrong? What did I do?" And she wouldn't speak to me. I'd have to find myself food. As a 7-year-old, like, how do I open this can? And then she would come out and everything would be okay. And that kind of was the story of my entire life. If mom had a fit, I guess we would call it, I needed to take it apart, figure it out, fix it. And whatever she said, if I didn't agree, if I didn't apologize, then it didn't go over well. And so her emotions were always very close off to me. They were more fear and anger. And that was hard to navigate and understand. And I didn't really understand how to connect with people for a very long time because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm thinking about other people that have gone through things like this. And a lot of times people are very upset and bitter when they start to think about things that they went through.
Sure.
Can you talk about what it is that you felt as you went through this?
I can. And I do realize that a lot of people that I communicate with feel like a victim. They feel attacked. They feel, why me? I've never had that experience. I don't understand it. I always felt empathy. I always could feel my mom's pain. I could feel her inner child wanting to be loved. And I was 7. And I didn't have the words then to say, Mom, I think you're overstimulated, or Mom, I think you're this. I didn't know that verbiage then. So empathy is really what I always felt. And awareness and acceptance that she was going through her own struggle, as well as my dad was. And so I never carried that I guess for lack of better words, like victim mentality.
Mhm.
It was always something that I could fix, that I could manifest into a better situation. That's always where my mindset and my heart work.
Yeah. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your experience with your dad. It sounds like most of it was worrying about mom and making sure that you were one taking care of you, but also you were taking care of mom. What about dad?
So my dad he also is no longer with us on earth. He passed away in August. And I had a wonderful friendship with him until until the day that he left, and maybe even now. So dad was amazing. He was his own person. He was authentically himself. And but he had his own struggles. He was raised in the foster care system in the 50s and 60s. So he was mainly illiterate most of his life. He had struggles reading. So at age, I would say 9 or 10, I was filling out his paperwork. If he went to the doctor, if he needed a job, I did the application. Anything that required reading or writing, I did for dad. He had an addiction problem. A lot of my family struggled with addiction. It's not something that I've ever struggled with, but I know it's real because I've experienced it. And so the early part of my childhood was a struggle with my dad. There was lots of, will he show up? Will I get to see him this weekend? And it wasn't until I was a teenager that my dad and I became very close when he stopped using.
Yeah, your parents were really close and had a great relationship. It wasn't until he found drugs, right, that they
were very in love, very close. And my dad was working third shift to try to keep the family together. We had been moving around in a couple of houses by the time I was a toddler, and he needed money, and he started taking uppers and using like meth and things that keep you awake, and he became addicted.
Yeah.
How many houses have you lived in, Jenna?
I know I've counted multiple times for you and the children and people I know. I think it was 53, but I'd have to go over it again, and we probably don't have time for that, but it was over 50.
Now, is that including as an adult, or is that just as in childhood?
That's including, so my entire life.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, we moved quite a bit, and that was normal for me. So actually, as an adult, I really enjoyed moving. Which is something my family didn't really. My wife and my children were like, "Are we doing this again?" It was hard for me to settle down and really stay put. I kind of liked the new change until I realized, you know what? I need to break this cycle. I want my children to have roots in a home. I want them to have a physical security. I want them to have something that they come back to, where they have memories. And so that's what I'm working on now. And we actually just bought our house in October.
So can you talk a little bit about what you did do to sort of break the cycles of the things that you dealt with? Because it sounds like in a lot of ways you always had sort of love and empathy, even though you were dealing with some of these situations, but there were also other things that you sort of learned pattern-wise from your parents. And maybe talk a little bit about those, and then also what you did to break those patterns.
Absolutely. So there were a lot of different patterns and cycles that I did not want to repeat as a parent. Although I didn't realize the entirety of that and what it entailed until about 5 to 7 years into parenthood. I just thought it would come naturally and easily, and that wasn't true. So the first pattern that I realized I needed to break was the financial one. My parents were not very good with money, and I admit I'm still not the best, but I'm teaching my children how to use their money, how to utilize it. There were multiple times growing up where we were evicted. My parents paid maybe 1 month rent. And then by the second month we weren't paying. And so we had to move out. And so I knew that, okay, we have to pay our bills. Okay, that's an easy thing to break. I can do that. And another pattern would be an emotional one where everything going on that's bothering me is everyone else's fault. And I can say, you're being too loud, you're doing this. I really started to look within and say, I'm overstimulated. I need a break. Another one is actually treating my children with support and awareness that their emotions matter.
Mm-hmm.
That was a huge one for me. And I still work on it. And sometimes I forget, and I will just be human and tell that I'm sorry. That was hard for me. And I reacted strongly because I am a human. But really letting them know that you can be upset. You can have this emotion, and it's okay. You're not ruining anything for me. You're not affecting my day. I'm worried about you, and I'm here. I never heard that. I don't think because my mom didn't or my dad didn't want to say it. They didn't know how. They had never heard that. They were not able to give that to themselves. So therefore, they were never able to give that to me. Yeah. So lots of different patterns and different aspects of life that I've navigated to break cycles.
And you were, whenever we talked previously, one of the things that sort of stood out on the financial side was as you were evicted, you sort of learned some of the things related to finance. You talked about this later on when you had gone out and spent some time with your mom. Can you talk about that?
Yes, I shouldn't laugh, but it is kind of funny. And I always say, if we don't laugh, we'll cry.
Right.
So, I had turned 18. So my mom had moved out with my stepdad when I was 17, and they had moved farther north to be farmers. And so I had my own kind of house. We were milking cows to pay for the rent. And then I eventually moved out and got my own place. So I had my own job. I had a checking account. I had my own apartment. I was 18, and we were going to go out one night. In Wisconsin, we drink a lot. And you can take your children into bars here, and they can drink with you when they're underage. It's very
So Jenna started drinking in the bars at 13?
Yes. So it was something that we did on the weekends. I went out with my family. And so when I was paying for myself, and I called my mom and I said, hey, I got paid. I'm really excited. But after I went through everything and I looked at my rent and I looked at food, I really don't have any money. I don't think I can come out tonight. And she said, oh, this is easy. Checks, they can bounce. And so you just go to the ATM and you just take the cash, and then the check will still go through and you can get the money in there some other time. Now, I was 18 and my brain wasn't fully developed, so please forgive me, but I didn't think ahead to the next week of how am I going to get the money in there at the later time. So I learned the hard way that, okay, the check didn't go through. The landlord called me. Hey, where's the money? And so I had to learn the hard way about that, doing it on my own. But yeah, my parents taught me some interesting ways to get around paying bills.
Wow. For me, that sounds so crazy to think about that. But those are patterns or things that you pick up, and then you have to break those types of things.
And it was normal. It was natural. It's what we did. It's what I had grown up doing. To me, there wasn't a problem. And in my mindset at that time, still at 18, well, I didn't care if the landlord was mad. My mom was like, who cares? You can if he gets mad, find another place to live. It wasn't a big deal. We didn't talk about the credit score. We didn't,
What's a credit score?
Exactly. I mean, it continued until the day she passed. When her mom passed, there was $7 in her account. No.
Yeah, my parents were never really ones to care about money or material things, and I do honor that in a way. I don't believe that what you have is what you are. It doesn't express who you are, and so I do that moral I was able to still take away while financially providing for my family. So it was a little bit difficult. Some people don't want to be like, they were when they were young because they were poor. And that really wasn't it. I still shop at Goodwill. I still buy used things and I have money. We have money. But I don't forget that money doesn't run the world. Like that is, it might out there, but in my world, it doesn't. And I do appreciate that they still taught me that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you learned those learning lessons of that money doesn't necessarily mean that you're happy. It doesn't mean that there's not, it's really not the important things in life. I love that you took that from them, but you also took the fact that stability is also important, to be able to provide to your kids and those types of things. And so, were you ever without your parents?
I was without my dad for a while during his addiction. I still had my mom. And then when we moved from California to Wisconsin, when I was 13, I was without both. So I was never in out of home care, but I was without them because of their lifestyles. If that makes sense. And I can elaborate if you'd like me to.
Yeah, maybe.
Sure. So my mom met my stepdad, and they went with the Wisconsin culture, and they went out a lot. They were gone often, until the wee hours in the morning. And my dad, he was still living in poverty. He had a little studio room above a bar. He shared a bathroom with like 9 other men. And sometimes he had a vehicle, sometimes he didn't, but he didn't care what I was doing. So as a 14-year-old, I was out with friends and living at their houses, and not with their parents. I was friends with like 25-year-olds. So I was without my parents in a developmental part of my life, but not an out of home care.
How does that shape your perspective now as you think about your own kids?
I think about it often, and sometimes I'll giggle and laugh at Kate, and I'll say, oh my gosh, at this time, when I was 14, I was, living at a 25-year-old's house and getting into fights and doing all these things. And my 14-year-old is afraid to go in the store by himself to get a loaf of bread sometimes, And so really picturing the things that were okay with my parents and having me be exposed to, and looking at my kids now, it just is as eye-opening as and into their judgment. And again, it's not a lack of love, because I know they love me, but another cycle that I needed to break as to what my kids actually experience, what they're exposed to, what they're seeing me doing, and how I'm handling it. Some of those things I can't imagine. I would be terrified. My anxiety would be sky high if the police brought my son home, and he's 13, and the police brought me home for the first time at 13 after we moved to Wisconsin. So I can't imagine, even though I've been through it. As a parent, and not that I want my kids to lead a sheltered life, but I want them to be educated as to what's healthy and what's safe, something that I didn't receive.
Do you, there was this point, right, when we had 3 kids, right? And we decided we wanted to expand our family. And it was important to both of us for different reasons to get involved with foster care, right? And really your reason was very noble and beautiful, because your dad and all of his siblings were involved in foster care.
Yeah.
But there was some training that we got that was kind of a game changer, right? That made us both kind of look back and be like, holy shit, like we've been through some stuff. What? Okay. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And I think maybe later we can put a link out for everyone to check this out. But there's something called the ACEs score. It's ACES. And it's adverse childhood experiences. So things that you had gone on in your life that would cause your brain to map differently, to wire differently. And I had never really been aware that the things that I went through would cause that. To me, I made it. I was being the best person I could be. I was I was smart. I knew what I was doing. And then I saw this and it kind of stopped me in my tracks. It was everything that I had gone through. If you had witnessed someone being abused in your home, if you had ever experienced physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, if you were ever homeless, if you were, there's just a list of things, and I checked every box. And for kids that are in out of home care, as we were going through training, if they had a high ACEs score, they were more likely to have stronger behaviors. And what that was is they were more likely to, use substances, to act out, to run away, to be more sexually active. And as you become an adult, that is more mental health, right? We're getting more diagnoses after 18 and more struggles. That was very eye-opening. My kids were really young when I became a foster parent. My biological kids were young. And so I was able to apply it and really change my parenting based on that. And I'm very grateful for that. The way the universe kind of went full circle for me. I did it because I wanted to give back the way that my dad's foster mother did. She was a beautiful woman that had tons of children in her home that didn't have a safe place to go. And I always wanted to recreate that. And then I was able to actually receive something that I never thought I would. And it changed my whole life. It gives you kind of a way to navigate those and to remap what you've gone through so that you can regulate, you can be successful and not have, not struggle as much with what you had gone through.
Yeah. And I know that one of the things that you have talked about is really about modeling. So some of the behaviors that you learned that you ended up having to sort of reevaluate within yourself because of your kiddos. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. And some of those are, a little funny. We laugh at them, and some of those are bigger. And forgiveness is a big thing because as a young parent, I did things that I would never do now. So I'll start with one of the funny things is just very small that you don't realize, your kids are watching you all the time. They're learning how to be a person by what you do and what you don't do. And so I would be getting ready, and this was in my early 20s. I had my first kiddo when I was 22. So when he was maybe 7 and his brother was 5, so I'm still in my 20s, I would be getting ready and I would hear my mom. She was not like the way she looked. She was very self-conscious. And so I could take that on and I would say silly things. I can't go anywhere. I look like a fool or something, my hair looks ridiculous or something of that nature. And I would get very dysregulated and worked up and I'd be yelling at the kids, get ready, because I was dysregulated. So fast forward, one day we were getting ready and I heard my son. He's 13 now, but at the time he was, 5 or 6. And he says, in the bathroom, he's all worked up, I can't go anywhere, I look like a fool. And my whole heart just dropped and I felt so bad for him. And Kate says to me that he heard you. He's saying what you say. And it dawned on me oh my gosh, what else is he hearing? What else is he witnessing? And taking that on as this is how we act. This is who we are. If I don't look good, it's not enough, then I'm not enough. And so I really started just changing everything from that one little thing. And it was funny, but it really helped me change big things as well.
Yeah, because our words matter. I mean, when we think about it, our words not only matter to us and what it is we're able to accomplish, but it's also the kiddos that are around us. They're mirroring what it is that we do.
Yes, and they're developing, and here I am. I'm their guide in this lifetime, and that's not what I want. The energy I want to be providing.
Yeah,
and definitely.
Maybe talk a little bit about the energy you have focused on with your kiddos.
So I focus on very open energy, welcoming, inviting, whatever word you want to use. And then what's really important to me is responsive parenting and gentle parenting. So it was right around that time I started diving in. We had learned about trauma, becoming foster parents, and then I heard my kiddo repeat my words and be unhappy with himself. And so I started focusing on what is my energy when I'm with them? How can I change this? And so when I would get really worked up or overstimulated, I have 6 kids and and I homeschool them. That would happen often. I would really look inward, and not in a bad way, like what's wrong with me. I would say, what is going on with me? What can I do to help myself?
Mm-hmm.
And it was really about just having empathy for myself and taking a break and then being real, which is hard. It's so hard to sit down in front of your kiddos and look at them and say, Mom messed up, because you don't want your kids to think that you messed up. As a mom, they think you know everything. They look at you like in admiration. But I do believe that it provides, as they grow, more admiration. My teenagers still come to me with their problems because I was able to focus in on the energy that I was providing. And is that open? Is it welcoming? Is it calming? Is it responsive? And if I'm not in a place to do that, I need to be honest. I love you. I want to hear what you have to say, but right now my head's somewhere and I just need a couple minutes. And that's really what I want them to seek out in life, in all relationships. Someone that can communicate well and give them what, as humans, like what they deserve.
Perfect. Yeah. And I know that self-acceptance and being your authentic self was also one of the other things that was super important to you. Can you talk a little bit about how you help guide them in that way?
Yes. I always felt different. So I think I said this in the beginning. I have a really hard time talking about myself. Um, and sharing my story. I've always felt different. I always had some connection to the sky. I would sit outside as like a 5-year-old and have like silent conversations in my head that weren't even with words. And I did this throughout my entire lifetime. I always felt strange. My mom was very worried about other people's opinions. So a lot of the I look like a fool was because she was worried what other people thought. She was worried what the house looked like. And so I really tried to take on like just what I can and who I can be and what I want to give, and really focus on that energy. And a part of it was my dad. He was so beautifully himself. And although he did struggle with reading or understanding things, he loved himself so much. And he was happy when he loved himself, when he was feeling good. And people loved him. People loved that man.
He thought he was hilarious. Like he laughed so much at his own jokes. He really enjoyed himself. He was he and I share a birthday, and
yes, he was a Leo. He
was a classic Leo, like in your face, star of the show.
That really just resonated with me. And I think, genetically it's there. And also he modeled that to me without knowing he was doing that, I think. And so showing my kids that if you're yourself and you're being 100% your best version of yourself, whether, and that can include not being perfect, right? That can include a panic attack or lashing out or losing a job. That's who you are. But you're aware, you're self-aware, and you want to grow. There's nothing wrong with that. So that's what I've always done. It was a bit of a struggle. I had to leave a marriage in my early 20s to be myself, because I wanted to be married to a woman, Kate specifically. And my mom was very, very afraid of that. And it took her a long time to come around. We didn't talk for almost a year. It was heartbreaking, but again, I knew that was her journey. And she did come around, and she was able to become best friends with Kate and really understand my lifestyle. And she did tell me, she said, you taught me how to overcome my fear with love. And that has always stuck with me. So I think if there's love, if people actually accept you for who you are, then you're around the right people. And then a part of it is, I am really weird. So I have face tattoos and dreads, and I live in the fairy woods. And so I think if I put that all on display and someone still signs up, they know what they're getting, right?
So yeah, some of that is protective, right? Like,
yeah, I suppose it is. And also like, and natural.
right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I like the fact that you not only have you learned things from your mother and you broke cycles, but your mother actually learned from you. And I think that that is one of the things that is so beautiful in life, is that we don't always have to be the teacher as parents. Sometimes we're actually here to learn, sometimes from the beauty of our kids.
And I'm glad that you brought that up. I do believe that our children are our teachers. The world was a different place when I was a kid, and it's a different place now when they're children, and they are shaping the future. And if we're going to evolve, if we're going to be a part of the future, we need to learn with them. And so I let them teach me every day, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. And a lot of times people are living in fear by, like, I hear this all the time. Oh my gosh, this new generation. And then you heard this, with the previous generation and the previous generation. And they're like, oh, the kids these days, they blah, 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 whatever it might be. And people are like living in fear on their expectation that they have for this generation that's after them and what it's going to be, instead of just embracing some of the things that maybe you can learn from them. Maybe talk a little bit, because I know fear is one of those things that growing up were some of the things that you had to overcome. And maybe talk a little bit about what you have learned about fear and how it can impact you.
Yeah, I would actually like to also connect that to being authentically myself, because we do lead a very non-traditional lifestyle. We unschool our kids. So I know I had said in the beginning, I homeschool them. I use that term because not everyone has heard of unschooling. And so that comes with fear, because we're doing something that, not a lot of people are doing. But fear is always there, I believe, for all of us, especially people that have experienced childhood traumas or traumas as an adult, that instills a lens of fear. And really focusing on removing that lens and replacing it with a lens of love is my goal. I feel if I'm looking through my lens of fear, I am worried if my biggest worry my whole life is no one stays, everyone leaves. And that was what I had learned as a child. If I wasn't emotionally perfect, my mom left me emotionally. My dad left because he was unstable and addicted. Like there was a never someone that just stayed. And so I was able to overcome that by realizing that that was their journey, and teaching myself that if someone just decides to leave, then it wasn't meant to be, and I will be okay. I don't need people to stay, although it feels wonderful and you want to have that. That's not what necessarily, it doesn't happen. Things change. But I still live in fear every day, and I try to break that cycle. Some days are better than others. I try to vibrate on a higher level, which for me, we're all energy and frequency. So when I'm in fear, I'm kind of lower. I can't, nobody can really hear me. It's like turning a radio down. My energy is low. My frequency is low. I'm pushing things away. What if this happens? What if that happens? It's a closed-minded reptilian brain at that point. When I am able to remove that, raise my energy, put my lens of love on, I love this life. Yes, my house is really dirty, but I have this beautiful house and I'm going to clean it. I'm really overstimulated, but I have these beautiful kids that need me. I'm just going to express to them, hey, I'm overstimulated and I need a break. And they're going to give that to me because they love me. Or whatever went on, for other people, like work or whatever. It's a lens of love. And if you can remove fear, it's so much easy. Like it's easier to live that way. So fear is hard to overcome. The best way to do it is to really just have self-acceptance, awareness, and love.
Yeah. And when you have fear, you're in your lower vibration. And as you push fear to the side, you have a higher vibration, which
Yes.
helps you to manifest, which is really some of the things that you even had to do at a younger age, is sort of manifest things that weren't provided to you as well.
Yes. I've always, back to like not having that victim mindset. I just always thought, I'm going to make this happen. I deserve this. I want this. This can happen. And so,
yeah, talk about some of the things you would do as a kid, like if you wanted a certain meal, what you would do.
yes, well, I guess I don't know what the word is for that. Resourceful, scroungy, scrappy.
Yeah.
I'm a coffee drinker. I've always loved drinking coffee. And when I was 15, I loved coffee, but we didn't have money. And so my mom would always drink Folgers, and we couldn't afford it anymore. So we had to buy dollar store coffee or whatever came from the food pantry. Well, I got the phone number off the back of the Folgers can, and I called it and said, hey, this coffee was stale. I need you to send me a new thing. And they did. They would send you new, like you give them the address and they would mail it to you. So then we would have Folgers coffee in the house, which at that time was nice coffee to me. Not anymore. And so now I like really bougie coffee. If I wanted, oh, these chips were delicious, I'd do the same thing. I'd call the number and say, there was a bug in this bag. We need a new bag. And at that time, in the early, what was that, 2000, like they would send you a new bag of chips. So I would look in newspapers and find things that say, like, if you complete this program, you get free pizza. And then I would just fill it out and like sign my mom's name and go to the library and be like, hey, I did all this reading as a homeschooler. And then they'd give me like free coupons for pizza. Like I was just always finding ways to get what I wanted and needed. Maybe they weren't obviously they weren't the healthiest ways,
but it's survival. You manifested those things. You were like, okay, I'm going to find a way. And you found those things.
Yes. And
survive.
It did help me survive. Definitely. And I do believe that at some point I was vibrating then on a higher level because I knew I was going to get these things. And going back to fear, when you're vibrating lower, you're pushing things away. So you're not really in tune. Your intuition is kind of off.
But
when you're vibrating higher, your intuition is more in tune because you're literally connecting with, oh, what's going on? I can feel this going on at my friend's house, or I can feel this going on at work because your frequency is so high at that point. So it's, I guess if there's energy, if you're at the fair and a fight breaks out, you're like, everyone looks, right? Oh, what's going on? There's a lot of energy over there. So we all carry that energy, and it can be, it can be high because it's anxious and bad, but it can also be high because you're manifesting and calm. And that's what I like to focus on.
Yeah. And so this weekend is Mother's Day. Can you talk a little bit about, because one of the things I think is cool is the experiences you've gone through as a mother. And so can you talk a little bit about those different types of experiences?
Absolutely. So as a small child, I had over 30 baby dolls. I've always wanted to be a mom. Nurturing was just instilled in me from birth. I believe it's the reason I'm here is to love and nurture, and that's why I'm so empathic. I can be in tune with my children and children around me. Sometimes I have to mother adults in my life and help their inner child, and I love that too. But my motherhood journey started at a young age. I remember caring for family members when they were babies. I was a nanny for a few years, and then my motherhood journey started with a couple of miscarriages, which was really heartbreaking. And then now I have 6 beautiful children in all different ways. Kate carried our oldest, and so although he wasn't the first child in my life that made me a mom, he is my oldest. And then Luca was my firstborn. He made me a mom. He will be 16. And then I have Brandon and Xavier that I carried. And then I have 2 adopted girls, Jojo and Breland. And I have just loved parenting in all different ways. The kiddos that came to me from other mothers, the kiddos that came to me from my own body, and the kiddo that came to me from the person that I love the most in this world. And they all call me mom, and I don't take that lightly. That is a big deal for me. I also was a surrogate. That isn't a part of, it's a part of my motherhood journey because I was able to share my love for motherhood with someone who I knew would enjoy it as much as I do. A really good friend of mine who absolutely is the best mother ever and wanted to be a mother. I was able to help her daughter join us on Earth. She used my body to get here, and that was my last pregnancy, and that was a really great way for me to kind of close that part of my body to motherhood. I was done then carrying humans, but I've just living every day with them, watching them grow, being the person that they come to, the person that they look up to, that kind of just guides them is my dream come true. I feel like I'm living a dream every day. And, you know, my 15-year-old still, and I know I don't know, he probably won't care, but he still cuddles with me. Like, they all cuddle, you know, they snuggle right on me, and I am their safety. And that's all I ever wanted to provide was safety and love. And I feel like I'm doing it. So,
yeah. And I think one of the things that was really important to part of your story is being a foster family. One of the things that you sort of learned is that sometimes parents will struggle. And you have a little bit of a different perspective whenever it comes to fostering. It's not just about, you know, we have the child. So can you talk a little bit about how you incorporate the family?
So a lot of people go into foster care, you know, to help kids and for adoption. It's a way to adopt, and I don't believe in that. That breaks my heart. The foster care system was meant to help families in need, to help families reunify. My dad and his siblings grew up in foster care, but their mom was still their mom. They loved her deeply. And even with my traumatic childhood, that was what I knew and what I loved. And had someone taken me away from that, that would have been even more traumatizing in my opinion. And so Kate and I did a lot of research, and the studies show that if it's healthy, if it's safe, having a child involved with their natural biological family is the best thing for them. And so when Kate and I started our foster care journey, we never planned on
not want to adopt.
That wasn't our plan. We wanted to help families. And as we went through it, we learned that the system just isn't set up for getting in touch with humanity. It's not there for the families. And so we're only two people, and we did what we could. So with the kiddos that we have adopted, their biological families became our families. And unfortunately, you know, one of those families we don't have a lot of contact with right now, but our youngest daughter and her family, her mom and dad, they're her mom and dad. They see her often. She has 4 parents. She has 2 homes. They love her deeply. It was nothing that they really did wrong or doing wrong that keep her unsafe. So really being there for the family and providing that piece of humanity that the system doesn't was what we could do for them. And that was how we changed like our little bit of the world over here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love
and we
that.
did help some families reunify.
Yes.
and for us, it's just super important, whether we like it or not. You know, our given family is a part of us. You know, and sometimes it's unsafe, and that sucks, and that's a whole other, you know, thing altogether. But the vast majority of the time, parenting, I don't know, mistakes really are just mistakes, right? They come from, you know, the best of intentions, but a lack of skills, not a lack of love.
And we were able to connect with our daughter's parents so well that they were able to break cycles that they didn't realize that they could do. And I am beyond grateful that we have this journey with them. And it was actually it was on Mother's Day weekend that they had talked to us about adopting, and had asked us if we would do that so that they could stay in her life. So it's kind of, Mother's Day weekend is really important.
Yeah. I hope that people that are involved in the foster care system that are helping, that maybe they'll hear your stories, that the things that you guys are doing, and maybe rethink. Maybe this will help them rethink. So more people that are doing foster care, they will rethink how they can also help and embrace other families.
I hope so. I hope that, you can open, if you're doing foster care, if you have an adopted kiddo, really open your mind and heart to, even, if that kiddo was in a neglectful situation or an abusive situation, but mom or dad have done work to change. That is really what we're here for. We're here to learn and grow and change and support each other. And that's kind of what makes this whole life like a badass journey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Well, I'd like to end with one last question. What does the future hold for Jenna?
That's a good question. I've been asking myself that a lot lately. Kate and I have started on a new adventure. We started a little business doing tattoo photography and videography. It's Goddess Inc. Creative. And we've worked with an amazing artist for most of it, Joey Herrera with Scrim Tattoos. We've done some traveling work with some other artists at tattoo conventions. And it's kind of combining my passion of photography with my passion of body art and Kate's amazing business mind. So I think the future holds more traveling, which as a family we love to do in our non-traditional unschooling ways. And I think it holds more giving and loving and just really spreading light.
Yeah. And I would love to be able to, so one of the things that we love to do is also just share gifts and talents that our guest audience have. And so I would like to also invite us to also put some information out about Goddess Inc. Creative for you. So people that are interested, Jenna is an amazing photographer, not only of this type of art, but I also am connected to her on Facebook. So I get the pleasure of seeing all of the photos that she takes of her family. And she's just a very talented photographer.
I appreciate that, Sarah. I really don't like talking about myself. It's just something that I do for fun. I don't know. I just like capturing it. I love the entire life experience. And for some reason, capturing it in photos and videos really does it for me. It's my thing. Yeah.
So I'm just including a link down there for our audience. If you're interested in that, you can go take a look at that. I may have messed it up. So let's add that in again. And so, Jenna, I want to thank you so much for joining us, especially on Mother's Day weekend. And we really enjoyed chatting with you. I also just want to pull up a couple of things that people said along the way. I think I know who this is. They have Facebook user, but I think that this is the mother that you actually helped. And she said, "We will always be grateful that you helped me become a mom." And then just some other comments. "You are amazing, Jenna," from Kim, Renee, "Amazing, Jenna and Kate." And so, our audience, I think, really connected with you. And I really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to the audience members that commented. And to Bridget, you were always a mom. I just helped your daughter get here.
I love that.
Much, ladies, and happy Mother's Day to both of you.
Happy Mother's Day around.
All of you out there.
Yes.
Thank you. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you, everyone.